Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Micro-fulfilment, a new era in urban logistics by The Logistics Point. I'm Nick Bougiou, editor and founder of The Logistics Point. Thank you very much for joining us today. Today I'm joined by three wonderful speakers. One of them you can already see, James Smith, Managing Director of Autostore UK and Ireland, who is going to talk about micro-fulfilment and how the industry has changed, not only during the coronavirus pandemic, but with what will happen in the next few years.
Nick, thank you very much. Thank you. First of all, thank you for the invitation to actually speak at the conference today. And it's a subject that, as we go through this morning's presentation on behalf of Autostore, you'll find is something that's a real passion of mine, talking about the future of retail and how automation, technology, and what we've now coming to learn as this term of micro-fulfilment can really drive retail forward in the years to come, and is doing right now. So absolutely, as it says, micro-fulfilment, the new era in urban logistics, and I think we'll really capture that today during today's presentation. So first of all, a little bit of an introduction to both Autostore and obviously to me. So Autostore as a business was formed back in the mid-90s, and we've grown over the last few years to the point that today we've got almost 400 employees located all over the world in dedicated Autostore facilities, into 33 different countries. And our actual solution today has got over 20,000 robots in operation. So the most important thing about Autostore, when we're talking about this new field of micro-fulfilment in the retail space, is actually the fact we've been established for a long time. We are a guaranteed brand that's been around. It's not brand new technology. It's a little bit about me. I joined the business back in 2017, really to grow the Autostore image in the UK, grow the business in the UK, and focus on key market sectors. My background is very much associated with the materials handling industry, the manufacturing industry that the UK is so well known for, but also the logistics industry as well. So my background really ties nicely to actually Autostore's traditional business, which has been in the warehouse and distribution industry, but actually now into the retail and the micro-fulfilment space, which is so very exciting to us.
Shopping online is redefining the grocery industry. The customer just wants to go online, pick, order, pay, and collect their goods, where and when it suits them. Fulfill orders in minutes, not hours. Whether you want order fulfillment in-store, in the back room, or in a dark store, Autostore has been disrupting order fulfillment for 2 decades. Some of the world's biggest and most famous brands use our technology. Why? Because it just works. Autostore is the fastest, densest, and most flexible order fulfillment solution per square foot. If you need more speed and capacity, simply add more robots or extend your system. It works in big scale and small scale. After more than 500 installations in all sizes all over the world, an award-winning green mindset, and an unrivaled uptime of nearly 100%, we are ready to redefine your grocery store. Free up your aisles and offer a new and better experience for your in-store and online customers, and offer other profitable services like home delivery or curbside pickup. Autostore, built for tomorrow, today.
I'm hoping that video really captured a lot of where we are today in the marketplace. There's a few words that I really picked up during that video. The first one was speed. The second one was customers wanting things when they want them. It's no longer about what the actual business can deliver. It's about the customer experience, and most importantly, the customer expectations. And there's another really key piece that we'll touch on later in the presentation, which is around the reliability and the dependability of technology when we implement automation into this micro-fulfilment and retail space. If we just think back, though, for a few years to the way that customer expectations in deliveries have actually changed. If we think back to probably 10 years ago, something like a 10-day lead time for an order was probably acceptable. Yeah, we've seen those delivery lead times, those customer expectations reducing over several years, as this graph here shows. And of course, there's been one huge impact globally, and especially we've seen it in the UK, which is the Amazon effect. And most importantly, the Amazon Prime effect, the fact that you can pay a subscription and get a plethora of inventory, goods, SKUs next day for the most part, and guaranteed next day. And that really now has set the industry standard, and something that we're seeing so many supply chain companies and retailers now trying to achieve, that next day delivery, or even as we're now starting to see as we go into 2020 and 2021, days becoming hours. And I'm sure at some point in the future, hours possibly even becoming minutes, as we continue to develop better and better technology and implement it into our logistics networks. Of course, to get the products to the people and to fulfill that customer expectation, it's all about last mile fulfillment. That's one of the big buzzwords that's in the industry today. And one of the key things is how within an urban landscape do we actually get products and groceries to people within the expectations of when they want it. There's no doubt that the pictures on screen today may be a little bit futuristic, but of course, if you live in Milton Keynes, you're used to seeing autonomous robots doing grocery deliveries. And this is something we can expect to see more and more of as we go forward in the next few years, is very green environmental delivery solutions, which is what our city centres from an environmental, a clean air perspective need, there's no question. But of course, what does that mean to the supply chain networks, the logistics networks? That means that we can no longer rely on the big central warehouses, the huge dark stores that exist, that today predominantly fulfill online orders. These green, very environmentally friendly delivery methods have got one huge limitation, which is the amount of distance they can travel before they actually run out of either person power or battery power predominantly. And that's a huge challenge. That huge challenge means we need to bring the inventory into the urban space. And to bring inventory into the urban space really means we need to invest and develop this concept of micro-fulfilment, this creation of automation, density, and efficiency into urban centres, into city centres, into our town centres that exist today. So as we say that, let's have a little think about what's happened over certainly the last 12 months that we've been living through this awful pandemic. COVID-19 has no doubt changed the world for everybody going forward. When you look at the trends and the surveys that have been done, today more and more people use online sales. People that typically pre-COVID wouldn't have used online at all have now not only adopted the technology, but are finding that a huge percentage of their purchases are actually done online and fulfilled online. And they're enjoying that flexibility of using the online environment. So we can see that as a trend that carries on. If we look at online growth from 2017 to 2020, it was steadily growing at around 1 to 2 percentage points per annum as CAGR growth. That was okay. Then all of a sudden COVID hit, the whole world stopped. And suddenly we saw 5 years growth in 12 months. It was astronomical. And whilst the economic forums, the ONS, the retail economics and people like that predict that in 2021, that 28% online that we saw in 2020 will probably dip a couple of percentage points. There's no doubt as we get further in through 2021 and then in the next 3 to 5 years, that baseline of 28% will not only be maintained, but will continue to grow probably more than 1 to 2% per annum because we've adopted online sales. And of course, by adopting online sales, we've actually changed our paradigms and our culture of how we buy things, and our customer expectations have changed, especially around delivery and consumer experience. Of course, there's one other major factor with COVID that we've experienced, and that is no longer can we go into a supermarket and experience, as uncomfortable as it quite often is, the picture on the right-hand side of your screens. Today we need to have social distancing. We need to wear face coverings for the foreseeable future. Even with the vaccines that are now being rapidly deployed across the UK, we can still expect, I believe, certainly for the next 12 months, to be required to do some form of social distancing and probably some form of mask wearing in indoor spaces. And of course, the other big challenge with in-store shopping that anybody will have experienced in a grocery store today is actually you go in there and there are people, store employees, fulfilling and picking online orders in store. They're pushing around big heavy trolleys, typically with 6 to 8 baskets in a trolley at a time. And there's a lot of them. They're competing for that exact same space that the consumer's in today. And not only does that challenge this socially distanced environment, it also challenges the environment of actually wanting to be in store. Do you want to be competing with that particular store employee to be able to buy the fresh bananas or some other produce off the shelves? Probably not. And that's something that we can really start to look at with micro-fulfilment. So when I consider the retail space today and how we can implement and deploy automation and technology into that, I really see 3 pillars that can be either the success or the failure for the retail space of how that journey looks like. The first one, and the most important for me, is reliability. If the retailers, especially grocery, but also there's other retailers as well, hardware suppliers that are supplying the DIY in the building community, the type of companies that are supplying homewares, everything that you think of, retail space, the actual clothing industry, the sports industry, if they are going to invest and actually deploy automation and technology into their stores, the first thing it has to be is reliable. The worst case scenario, thinking about that consumer experience, is actually when you go into store, something isn't available because the technology has broken down. The second pillar actually is scalability, is having a technology that you can deploy into multiple different sites using the same foundation, the same modules, but actually scale it up and down to suit what that retail store is. You only have to go into a major, one of the top 5 grocers anywhere in the country, and you will see their grocery retail stores vary by size, by design, even if you look up by ceiling height. And you need a technology, if you're going to invest in this micro-fulfilment concept, of actually something that can scale into whatever size space you have. And that's a really key pillar to success. And the third one is density. One of the biggest challenges that we get in the retail space today, especially pre-COVID, and we can expect it once retail thankfully reopens later this year, is availability of product. There's nothing more frustrating for anybody who's a shopper to go into store looking for the latest things that either from the younger generation have seen with one of the influencers or maybe somebody's seen on a TV advert. Go into store, it's on display, but guess what? It's not available to buy because they've either run out of stock, they haven't got your size, they haven't got the color you want, etc. So one of the real strong pillars going forward for this type of automation, this micro-fulfilment, is actually creating super density to increase the amount of inventory at that local level, to make availability better for the consumer, and to actually inspire confidence for that consumer to go back into store, and most importantly for the retailers, keep going back into store. Now, while we consider 3 pillars for success, I actually think there's a 4th one, which is becoming more and more important to the consumers and more important to most major retailers as well, and that is sustainability. We need to have sustainable solutions, and there is a growing trend that consumers will buy solutions that are seen to be environmental and sustainable. And that's a really important thing. So if we look at these in a little bit more detail, first and foremost, reliability. So take our concept with the Autostore with micro-fulfilment. Globally, that installed base of almost 600 systems, we monitor those, and currently we're running at over 99.6% availability. That is the leading automation equipment availability anywhere, of any of the manufacturers, of any of the solutions that are available in the marketplace. Reliability is key to retail success. Within our system, there's no single point of failure. Nothing will actually stop the system from working. And the further thing there is when we consider automation, what's really important is we don't require specialist on-site teams to actually support our technology when you install it in a retail space. It destroys any business case if you actually try and install something in retail and then require 2 or 3 permanent people to actually maintain it and keep it operating. That will destroy any cost benefit, any efficiency gain that you can get immediately. The next one we looked at and talk about is the scalability aspect. Do you put in a system that's locked that you can never do anything with, or to expand it, you'd have to remove it and put something new in? That's not efficient. That's not environmental. With our solution, you can actually start with something that suits your business today. And then as your store, your online, your general business grows, you expand the system to meet the business growth. And you can do that without interrupting and without stopping the actual system that you started with. So you can expand it without business interruption at all. That's a really, really key benefit. What you can also do with our system, if you relocate premises, is dismantle it and take it with you. It's something that's actually relocatable, which is another really key win. Density is that really key thing for the retail space. We all know retail space isn't huge. We're not talking about warehouses with hundreds of thousands of square feet of capacity. We're talking about smaller units. Even the grocery industry, the amount of space they've got potentially for micro-fulfillment is quite limited. And of course, what we're talking about today is urban fulfillment, micro-fulfillment in the urban space. City centre space is terribly expensive. It's incredibly high square metre price for rent, for ownership of space within the city centre, especially when we look at it in the south in London. So the less space we can use, or the more inventory we can put into that space that we've got available, the more that's going to create a better use of space and a much more cost-efficient solution. The other thing we've got with creating more space, I'm sure most people who are actually listening to this have seen and been into something like an Apple store or something like a department store when there's something happening. Take your typical Apple store, and you'll always have somebody 2 or 3 times a day, maybe more, at the front of store demonstrating their latest product, or even demonstrating the latest feature in an existing product. Why do they do that? It's all about customer retention. Finding new customers typically costs 7 to 8, maybe 10 times more than actually retaining an existing customer. If you can create those customer experiences, those immersive things that happen in store, one, you'll increase the amount of revenue from those customers that are actually watching that, because there's a very strong chance that they'll want to buy that new product you're demonstrating. Or if you can continue to fuel and educate them with new features of those existing products, guess what? They'll continue to buy your brand and you'll retain that customer. So being able to create more space for these immersive customer experiences is something that's generated by actually developing and putting in micro-fulfillment technology. And of course, the final piece I mentioned a few minutes ago is increasing the amount of inventory that's available at local level, and the actual availability for people to not only walk in off the high street and buy something when they're out shopping, which we'd all like to get back to doing, but actually having more availability of inventory for click and collect services, for actual online fulfillment at the local level. That's a really important thing for the retail industry going forward. And finally, I talked about sustainability. And I think when we look at our solution, we've got a market leading sustainability message. The first one is, within our solution, we don't need the lights on, so we can turn the lights off. So there's an energy saving immediately. The second one is what we're talking about today. It's urbanization. With having such a dense storage solution, we can utilize that urban space, that availability, even recreate redundant retail space into micro warehouses that are available on the high street. Wow, how fascinating would that be? We use a super low power system. We've got clients that are actually powering their entire automation technology in their warehouse using solar panels on the roof of the warehouse. 100% renewable energy you use to actually drive and power that automation technology. That's what we talk about with low power, the lowest on the marketplace. Environmental aspects, we use very high quality equipment, which means it doesn't get scrapped. And that's very key. So we're not actually putting things into landfill. We've got systems that still operate in almost 25 years after we first installed them. And that shows quality, that shows dependability. And finally, storage, making most use of that space that's available. So that's our green message, that's our sustainability and environmental message. So if we look at the urban landscape today, what do we typically see? We typically see today that actually warehousing is out of city most of the time. It's in urban warehousing space. We've all driven up and down our motorways and seen these huge, mostly automated sheds, warehouses that are there that do central logistics operations. Or quite often we have to drive a long way to go to an out of town actual retail park that has larger facilities, which may be great, maybe a great customer experience if you can afford a day out. But there is so much of the British public that actually want that availability of inventory that you get at a retail park actually in the city centre, where potentially they can walk, take a bus, take the tube to go and do their shopping. They don't need to spend significant amounts of time travelling just to get to that retail space. So if we look at the modern retail company, be it grocery, be it fashion, sporting goods, whatever it is, I think we can say that something between about 50 and maybe even up to 2/3 of the actual purchases that are done online. They had started and initiated online. So actually, if we're going to do that, what we can do is create hubs where those purchases that are initiated online can either be collected in that urban environment, if that's your preference to go and do click and collect at a time that suits you, or alternatively, looking at those green delivery methods, they can be delivered from that local store. So that's how we start to think about the future of redeveloping the retail space and implementing micro-fulfilment technology. The picture you can see on screen, personally for me, is a very sad one. When I look at especially recently, the number of large department stores of which I've frequented many, many times have actually closed. And we've seen those businesses shift online. There's a number of reasons for that, and we won't dwell on that too much. But I think one of those reasons is actually what those department stores did with the space that they got available and how immersive it was, and actually the way that they interacted with their people and their customers. And I think there was more the actual retail space could have done to avoid some of the closures that we've seen. I think some of them probably inevitable, but I think some of the closures that we've seen could have been avoided if there'd have been a little bit more forward thinking about the way use of technology and use of more immersive customer experiences for those people that are coming in. What, for instance, if we had department stores that look like this, or retail stores that look like this? Immediately, it looks more appealing. It makes the high street look more appealing. It draws people in. But what if that retail store, that space, was actually a multi-purpose, multi-function facility? If you like, a micro warehouse or a micro-fulfilment centre. From the consumer at street level, you'd never know that from the vision that you get from looking at the store. It looks like a normal store. Well, let's explore that a little bit further. What if we put micro-fulfilment in the back of store? Remove all of the manual storage, or most of it. You'll still need some manual storage for oversized goods and things that maybe you don't want to put into the automation. But predominantly remove that and actually put automation in. Going back to previous slides, suddenly you've got the potential for actually storing up to 4 times more inventory on the high street. I mean, that's a fantastic thing. What we could also then do is facilitate local click and collect services that potentially could be 24/7. Scan a QR code to get you access to dedicated pickup points where you can come and collect at a time that suits you, providing, of course, that whatever you're buying can actually fit through the system. There are certain limitations. We can also, from exactly the same system, be facilitating localized deliveries. Now, be that with groceries, with the Ubers and the Deliveroos and people like that of the world, or be that with these new urban fulfillment methods that we saw on the second slide. It really does depend on what's working in that particular centre, in that particular urban environment. But what we can do is use one central medium to actually do all these different functions. And of course, let's not forget that we've still got the retail customers that actually want to go into store. They want to browse in store. They want to see things, touch things, look at things, and buy in store. And again, creating more inventory for those people in the rear of store creates a better experience, and it actually makes them come back more and more often. So let's take a look at a couple of different customer journeys of what that could potentially look like. The first one is that click and collect service, where we actually place an order, typically on a mobile device, could be on a computer. We get a inventory, we get a stock confirmation that it's available in store, and it's available in store to pick up from when to when. We then go to store, potentially if it's out of hours, scan our QR code, get secure access to a collection point, pick up our goods, or alternatively we go, as we do so many times in the UK today, into store and do that collection in store, whichever the consumer prefers. The second customer journey starts the same way. It's initiated online, but actually it's utilizing those local delivery services, whatever those are, to actually bring the goods to you, home delivery at a time that suits you. And that's an option that we can fulfill with greater inventory availability from exactly the same retail store. And then that very important third customer journey, that one where the retail customer wants to walk into store, look at things, touch things, browse, maybe use point of sale information in screens to actually look at availability and inventory, different colors that they may not be able to see available, and actually buy from a person in store. And we can facilitate that using the same automation technology that sits behind the store. So that retail consumer that's walking in doesn't realize that there's an automated system running that retail store in the back room. All they see is a wide open, friendly, inviting, potentially immersive experience of actually walking into store, driven by micro-fulfilment technology. What we can see on the video here is potentially what that store of the future could look like to the consumer. We believe there's a real opportunity for having maybe a cafe area which can actually see the system working. That's really cool. Being able to see the system collecting your order, actually building up your order for you. Having an area where you can securely go and collect your goods, even if you select and order goods at the ports if necessary, and actually pick them up there and then. Finally, we should still have that traditional shelving in store. Those traditional aisles, the fresh goods that you can go and see and you can choose yourself. One of the key benefits when we look at this type of technology today in micro-fulfilment is really increasing the amount of availability by automating a lot of the pick, taking a lot of the pick away from the storefront environment. We also increase the control we've got of what's available because the system's controlling it. That means when you go into store, you've got more chance of something that you want to buy being available, especially if you're checking online, because you can check real-time stock availability. And it means that more and more often, those online orders that are placed, sometimes today we see items having to be substituted or not supplied because of availability issues. We eliminate that by putting in smart technology and increased amount of inventory into that retail space. And we think that is the future and the direction that we'll see, not just the UK, but most of the global economies going in within the next 12 to 18 months. At that, I'd like to say thank you for your attention. Thank you to Nick for organising such a fantastic event. I would be very open to answering any questions that have come in from the audience, and any questions you'd like to post to me, that would be absolutely fine. Of course, if anybody wants to connect with me, you can find my details within the event page, and also you'll find me on LinkedIn quite easily. And I'm always available to talk about what I think is the future of our retail space, which is micro-fulfilment driven by Autostore. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. It was really interesting to hear what Autostore is doing, and there were a few questions here. The first of them is, what is the process for restocking the micro-fulfillment system?
Great question, and it's the one thing that actually I didn't cover during the presentation. Typically, we would see an inbound operation which would be centered around the goods in area of the actual retail store. So we would have an area which is dedicated for the picking operation, but then typically where we've got goods in, the store's actually designed to do a goods in or goods receipt operation. We've put dedicated ports in that area for actually goods receipt. So we can operate replenishment and picking completely separate to each other. Alternatively, if it's a very small system and we're looking at doing dedicated shifts, for instance, for doing picking operations, we can then use exactly the same ports to do the replenishment from as well. So hopefully that answers that person's question.
And another comment and question. Major reason for lack of efficiency is the handling of loading and unloading of parcels. So how is the unloading, loading from trucks done of loose load parcels with the machine solution?
Typically, they would come into a retail space the same way as they do today. There will be normally some form of stock control on the inbound goods to check quality, to check quantity, and make sure that they're fit to go into the system. So that would normally happen anyway. Of course, we're seeing more and more robotics coming into the industry as well. Not just the robots that we use, but actually things like robotic picking technology, vision systems that can smart identify a particular item and then do the replenishment and the picking operation. So I think in the future, whilst we still use people to do the manual parts of decanting operation and possibly loading into the system, I think more and more as we go into the future, we'll see robots taking more ownership of that sort of work and those roles.
And maybe something that the question that would probably need for you to clear it out. What is Autostore selling? Is it the robots? Is it a fulfillment center? So what is the service?
So the service today is, our solution is basically 5 modules, which is the robots, the grid, the bins, the picking stations, and the software. So the black box you saw on one of the slides that I was presenting there is typically what the Autostore solution is. Driven by software, fully integrated. So it is a black box standalone solution that can be deployed into the retail space to actually automate that retail process of inbound and picking and outbound activities.
And a few other questions. What are the biggest challenges when we are transforming an old store into this new, it looks wonderful, but what are the challenges?
Now that is a great question. That's a really good question. The first challenge that we have to think about is actually the store layout today, and what is it that particular retailer is trying to achieve? What do they want to do with that retail space, and what physically can you put in the way of automation? Some retail spaces have incredibly low ceiling heights, which is a challenge for any form of automation to get good density into that space. And of course, we have to consider then things like the actual process, the amount of inventory we can get into our solutions. There's a lot of considerations that we can think about around, can we put the automation into the space that's available? I think that's the biggest challenge. Certainly with Autostore, one of the challenges that we overcome that many other technologies that are in the micro-fulfillment space are challenged with is power requirements and things like that. Because our solution is super low power, we're not requiring specialist power. And equally, we don't require the specialist floor considerations that typical technologies do. So for instance, significantly reinforced floors and things like that. We can put an Autostore almost anywhere very easily and very quickly.
And what happens with the stores that we already have, with these large stores like Tesco and Asda, for example?
Another very good question. What we can see, especially when we look at the micro-fulfillment installations that we've done globally today, is those big retail spaces will still, from the consumer perspective, look very much the same. What they will actually do, though, is because they actually take in that online fulfillment part of their business and putting it into the back of store, First and foremost, the store availability space increases, so it becomes a much better environment for the consumer to go into. And actually a trend that we're starting to see in the UK today is more and more of the retail space, especially the big grocers, the Asdas, the Tesco's, the Sainsbury's, people like that, are actually starting to bring more and more different diverse companies into their shops. So they're using that space availability to bring in a wider range of services and potentially a wider range of products to the consumer. I only have to look at my local Tesco, for instance, and they've got what was the Arcadia Group shop of fashion actually in their store. If I look at my local Sainsbury's, they've got key cutting services, a cafe, an Argos, and things like that in that retail space. And that's a trend that we can see more and more happening, that actually the big retailers, I mean, Asda recently have done a partnership with the Entertainer to bring dedicated space, dedicated aisle space to certain what we normally see is typically sort of shops that would maybe be in a shopping mall or something like that, into the grocery space to increase the availability of inventory, the range of products that are available, and actually share some of the square foot cost of actually operating that retail space. So I think that's a trend that we can see continuing, which is ultimately better for the consumer.
And finally, if we turn our focus to people, what is the role of people and employees, and do we need to retrain not only retail but also logistics employees?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the common questions that I get asked on a regular basis. And I think anybody that's involved in robotics will be asked, or automation will be asked, is, will robots take away jobs? And actually, I don't see it from that perspective. When we automate a process, what we do is we bring in technology. But if you just look at our business, for instance, we're increasing the amount of staff we've got in our business this year globally by over 30%. And those jobs that we're bringing in, we're selling more robots, we're selling more systems, but those robots have to be built. So we're actually bringing in people to build robots. Those robots require programming. So we're bringing in software engineers and engineers to actually maintain and run the systems. So actually what we're doing is we are moving the typical sort of job from what we see today into a higher skilled, higher paid, more enjoyable role of the future. And I think that's really, really key. And I'll use a phrase that I've heard actually one of the CEOs or MDs of one of the big 3PLs in the UK use on a very regular basis when he's been up on stage. And that is, today, if we think of 2030, 9 years time, something like 85% of the jobs in 2030 probably don't exist today. Now that for me is staggering. I've got 2 teenage kids, you know, and to think that potentially the jobs they will be doing in 2030 don't even exist today is incredible. But I think that shows the rate of progress and how we can actually then take people's existing skills today, retrain them, and actually put them into a better role of the future, which is better for them on a personal basis. It's more friendly for them. It increases their standard of living. It gives them better pay. So for me, the bringing automation, bringing micro-fulfilment into the retail space actually will improve people's lives, not the opposite.
And there is a very good question, which is, have you done any installations in basement and car park areas? And if yes, do you think that that is the way forward to replace bigger assets outside urban areas?
Yeah, absolutely. Things like the big shopping centres and things like that. The beauty with an auto store is you can put it almost anywhere. One of the things that we're looking at today, and to answer that person's question in 2 different ways, one of the things we're looking at today is, can we automate actually using car park space, using basement space, things like shopping centres where multiple different retailers could be feeding off the same system. So instead of a retailer actually having stock in store, they could be using an automation technology like Autostore with their own dedicated inventory bins, their own dedicated space within our technology to actually store securely their inventory and then just collect it on demand from store. So literally on something like on a point of sale device, an iPad, something like that, demand the inventory, and within a couple of minutes it's available in store for people to actually look at, pick, buy, whatever that is. And I think when we look at the retail space and those, especially the shopping centres, there's a real opportunity for automating a lot of that. And what do we do when we do that? We reduce the amount of inventory carried at the back of store. We create more space. It's more environmentally friendly. It's more, it's certainly socially distant. And it allows for different experiences to happen. You know, I talked about those Apple Store experiences where we've got people doing trainings and product demonstrations, things like that. They are immensely popular and from a revenue perspective, immensely positive. And the more of those that can happen, absolutely, I think they will do. The other thing that the other second part to that, the answer to that question is we actually have systems installed where we've put systems into either roof spaces, basements of retail stores to actually do that today. So we've done that at retail level, where a retailer's, for instance, got a basement inventory area and they've actually got a retail store above it. You know, we've actually put an automation solution down in the basement that feeds directly into the store. And that's an incredibly effective use of space, increasing availability of stock. And again, a much nicer experience for the customer.
Thank you very much for this. It was really, really interesting to hear not only how micro-fulfillment is developing, but what Autostore is doing. And if you would like to learn a bit more about Autostore and to also meet with James, you have the opportunity to send a message at the expo area, and you can also send him a personal message and ask him some more questions. Thank you very much again. And in 15 minutes time, we will be joined by Julian Fisher, who is the CEO and founder of GISP, a very interesting software company that will talk about micro-fulfillment and in-store marketing. And for now, I will leave you with the networking part. You can go to the networking lounge and meet with other attendees. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, everybody.